Daniel, what's going on?
Hi, Risa. Good afternoon. Nice to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah.
We are way overdue for catch up on all things Mexico and
Yeah.
I've been thinking about Mexico a lot, and I've been getting a lot of emails that I've been responding to. More and more people I feel like are just so interested in retiring there or relocating there. I don't know. Do you feel it on your end too?
Yes, like, I don't know, something happened with the pandemic where everybody just wants to kind of move abroad and go, somewhere coastal or somewhere exotic and kind of get out of the craziness, I guess. So we've been really busy. I mean, the busiest ever in the real estate market in the last 2.5 years. No one
That's
anticipated it,
insane.
but we're getting like a flood of people coming in, from all over the States and Canada and a few from Europe as well.
Well, I hope they're nice people. They're
They better be with me. Yeah, and you know what? And we're short of inventory. I mean, we have our inventory is really low right now. So if anything like really cool and sexy at the right price and the right location comes up, it's sometimes gone sometimes within a few hours or definitely within a few days or weeks.
That's crazy. I mean, actually, I've been shooting house hunters, as you know, pretty much around the U.S. This time
Hmm.
around, and it's pretty much everywhere. Inventory is low everywhere. I don't know what is going
Yeah,
on. It's still like
yeah,
pre-print, like at the beginning of the pandemic, where one house will get multiple bids and all that kind of craziness. And I don't
yes.
know. I don't know if you're seeing that in PV as well.
Yeah, I mean, last year, especially last year, there were a lot of like multiple bids. I had a property in the marina. It came on the MLS. I think it was on a weekend. I think it was on a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. And a couple of days later, I had to fly to Mexico City. The place was rented, so we couldn't do any showings. The renter was leaving on the following Friday, and from like Saturday to Thursday, I had 12 offers. Unheard of. That's never happened to me, at least to me, ever. In the since selling
Without
real
even
estate in
seeing it?
Vallarta, without even seeing it, 12 offers. I couldn't get a hold of the sellers because it was tax season and the husband's an accountant. But we had 12 offers, and the highest offer was $111,000 over asking. It was crazy.
Oh my
So
God.
it was pretty wild. Now this year, we're not, we haven't seen that kind of activity. We just don't have the inventory. As a matter of fact, I believe last year in MLS, if you look at all condos sold in the Bay, 75% were pre-construction. So that's kind of what's also driving the market right now is trying to build supply and demand, trying to build all these condos, and it takes time from planning a project until it finally gets approved. It could be anywhere from a year to 2.5 years. So they just can't build fast enough. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
Well, actually, then maybe it's a great time. We're talking about all the things people should be thinking about, before they even make the move to Mexico,
Right.
which I think is really important. I think that this is something that, people don't really talk about enough. Because there's a lot of those little things, right, that we don't really think about. I think we are good at thinking about the big things, the visas that we need before we go, or maybe,
Yes.
making sure we have our suntan lotion, making sure we have our bathing suits. Um,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of little things, just like the kind of furniture, if you're going to bring down furniture, or what kind of clothing, or, that you may not even want to like get rid of all your winter clothing because you may go back to Canada or Montana or wherever at a certain point or whatnot. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I know you have your own kind of thoughts on this. So I kind of wanted to dig in with you
Yeah.
in terms of what you thought as someone who is an expat yourself, someone who came from
Yeah.
LA, what you think, are some of the things that people should prioritize or think about before they make that move. So what would you
Yeah.
say
Well,
is,
yeah, I mean, you just brought up furniture, for example. That's one of the things that people should really reconsider. It costs a lot of money to pack your furniture up. Your armoire, your bed, mattresses and the sofas, and then paying that. huge shipping fee and having it shipped down here. Mexico has a lot of wonderful furniture companies. You could buy something prefabricated from the mall or furniture stores, or you could have something custom made, and it's affordable. So it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to have furniture made. I've had a lot of furniture made over the years. When we didn't have wonderful furniture stores, around like almost 20 years ago, but the city has grown, so we've got some incredible interior design stores, great furniture makers. So I don't think you should necessarily bring your furniture down here. And also, some of the materials don't last here in the tropics like they do in a dry climate. So leather, I've had people, bring down leather sofas. Bad idea. You know, leather furniture in the humidity, sweating on it is kind of gross, and it doesn't last. So, you have to kind of consider where you're moving to, what the climate is like, and have furniture, a patio or interior, that is built for that climate.
Yeah, yeah, and the woods are very
Right?
different too, right? So the woods
Yeah.
that
So
you
at least
find in
over here in
Mexico.
Vallarta, yeah. Well, in Vallarta, we use a lot of hard tropical woods like parota. You hear parota; it's a beautiful, beautiful dark wood. And then we have amapas wood as well. That's grown over here locally in the mountainside. So, and then we don't really use like pine. Pine is not that common here. It might be in other parts of Mexico, but in Vallarta, for the most part, you really don't see pine that much. So, these are the kind of things you should consider if you're going to be buying furniture here or having furniture made. Is what are the materials used, to
Right.
fabricate it.
And you were
So you
you
want
were
to make sure for
talking
that.
about costs, right, of shipping your stuff down to
Hmm.
Mexico. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can actually have one shipment or one carload or something that's going to be tax free, but that's only one time and one vehicle or something like that. Is that right?
Sure. Yes. Yes. You're right. So if you're a resident, whether it's temporary or permanent resident, you're allowed like one load, okay, of bringing all your personal belongings. You want to make sure it's used items. So if it's stuff that's in a brand new box, they're going to charge you for that at the border. And also, there's a lot of paperwork involved. It's not just throwing everything in containers and then just having a ship. You have to like itemize everything, and it's a one-shot deal. After that, then you have to pay. So really, it's not worth it. I mean, I've had clients after they shipped their furniture down here. They told me, "Oh my God, what a mistake that was." I mean, they spent more money on the shipping than what the furniture was worth.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
when you say pay, you're talking about import tax, right?
correct. And the shipping fees. You know,
Right, right.
yeah, some of
Yeah,
them
and
were
by that
taxed
time,
because of
unless
what
it's
they
something
brought
you really
down.
love, I think if it's something sentimental that you can't,
Right.
live without type of thing, then that's a different story. But I think for the most part, there's something also really, I know a lot of people who've moved down to Mexico, and it's kind of a really great opportunity to just purge and
Yes.
be able to get rid of a lot of crap that we all know we all have too much crap, right? So, uh, I think it's a good opportunity to just get rid of stuff.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. I sold all my furniture. I mean, I had a couple of yard sales. I mean, I planned all this stuff, and then I gave stuff to friends, to family, donated some of the items, and whatever was left over, I just kind of it was just thrown in the trash. But I just came down with my clothes, CDs.
Yeah, and your
We didn't
and
have
your
any
5,000 CDs.
CDs. What's that? And that was it. And then over time, I just when I bought a home and I started buying furniture again. I was renting for a while, and all the apartments that I rented, they were furnished, so that was fine. And plus, I don't want to buy anything and just kind of schlep it around. So finally, when I bought a condo, that's when I started, and that's a lot of fun. Going out there and shopping and looking for pieces that represents who you are and your style, and that kind of ties in with your surroundings and living in the tropics. It's a lot of fun. Who doesn't like shopping?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, it's funny that you talk about having, some places I know, and the places that we filmed in for House Hunters International in Mexico. A lot of those places are actually furnished already. So you're buying a place that already comes with furniture. So that's something else to kind of think about, right?
Yes, and if you're buying a brand new condo from a developer, the units are generally sold unfurnished. Sometimes they include some appliances, but they're not furnished. Some developers do offer a furniture package, but when you're buying a resale property, especially here in Vallarta, almost all of them, I would say a good 95% of them are sold furnished or partially furnished, because the owners they bought furniture specifically for that space, or they had something custom made for that space, and really it's not going to fit anywhere else if they take it with them, or it's not going to go with the style of their new home. So it's very common to have a property sold here with the furniture, and
Right.
that's nice. You can just bring your clothes and move in, and then over
Right.
time, if you want to swap a few things out, you can do that and make it your own.
Right. Exactly. Um, so I know you've talked a lot about driving to Mexico. What should people know about driving to Mexico? Uh, because
Yeah.
it's a little bit tricky, actually, right?
Yeah, it can be. It can be tricky, especially if you've never driven through Mexico before, or from, let's say, from your hometown in the States in a particular route going down to your favorite city. So in my case, I had never driven from LA to Puerto Vallarta. So when I decided I needed a car here, well, for the first 2 years that I lived in PV, I didn't have a car. I just walked everywhere, and I wasn't, in real estate. But once I started working in real estate, which was October of 2006, I needed a car. And we had an extra family car in Los Angeles, so I flew up and I planned on driving down. So now this is 2003. There weren't any GPS maps in your car. You didn't have smartphones, maps. We had a member. Do you remember MapQuest?
Oh, yes.
Am I dating?
I've used
Uh,
MapQuest a lot.
so I don't even think Google Maps was out yet. I don't recall. But there was MapQuest, and that wasn't all that accurate. And so I went to, remember, AAA. I went to AAA, the Automobile Club, and I got what's called a triptych. So they basically mapped everything out, printed it, put it in a binder, gave it to me. So nowadays, and then everything was it was pretty accurate. That was like, I was surprised how accurate it was. So it's almost like a Thomas guide, I had in the car. But nowadays, what I think would be a good idea is to use the Google Map, map out the best route, make sure it's accurate, print it out, have a print copy with you. Because when you're driving down here, especially if you've never driven to your Mexican destination before, and it's going to be a long drive, you don't know what kind of road conditions you're going to run into. So sometimes there might not be any cellular service, so the map might not be working. You're going through the jungle or through the desert. So you want to, kind of have a backup plan and have that map printed with you in the case you don't have any signal and you can't get it on your mobile device or in your car. Also, I suggest you take the toll highways, excuse me. So there's the free highway and there's the toll highway. The toll highways are really nice. They're wide, well lit. Um, so, and they did not all of them take credit cards. So you want to make sure you have enough cash with you. So when I drove down in 2006, I think I carried with me around 2 or 3 thousand pesos cash for the tolls, and that worked out great. Now, make sure you get a receipt in case you get pulled over and you're accused of not paying and just driving through the toll booth, which most people don't do, but it can happen. So make sure you have your receipt with you. And I would get some snacks, bottled water, and some toilet paper. Again, sometimes you're driving through miles and miles and miles without any rest stops, or there's an emergency, you have to pull over for one reason or another. Also, if you have any valuables, I would say put them in the trunk so they're out of sight. And what I did was, when I had my triptych from AAA, and we calculated it was going to take me, if I was going to spend one night in Mexico, it was going to take me well, it was going to take me roughly 2 days to get here. So I was going to spend the night in Mexico, and I thought, okay, where's that going to be? And I didn't want to drive at night because I'd never driven at night in Mexico at that time, and I'd never been on these roads before, so I don't know what kind of conditions I was going to run into. Since I was going to spend one night in Mexico, I didn't want to drive at night, considering I'd never driven this route before. So I planned on driving from sunrise to sunset. So I give myself basically 12 hours, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I kind of mapped it out, where would that be? 12 hours of driving, where would I wind up? So that's where I spent the night. And the next morning I got up early again. And then I think I was on the road the following day around 7 or 8 o'clock. And I arrived in PV around 4 or 5 p.m. And it was great.
Yeah, I talked to Janet Blazer on a previous episode, and she talked about driving from California to Mexico, and she ended up like meeting some guy that ended up like they ended up caravanning a little bit part of the way because she was single and alone, which worked out great for her, and she was going to Mazatlan. I've driven from Phoenix to Puerto Penasco. I do know, because I think safety is a big issue, right? That everybody thinks about, especially if they're driving alone.
Yeah.
And because it's true, there are some towns, like in every single country in the world, that, you probably do not want to go through, and I think it's good to know the tips that I was given was definitely, like you said, was to, make sure you're driving during daylight. I think the more kind of precarious locations tend to be near the border of the U.S. Mexico. But yeah, I think mapping it out and talking to people beforehand, and of course, if you're with somebody, that's always better, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a friend who drove down with me, and that was fun. That made the ride a lot more enjoyable. Another thing to consider is this, sometimes these highways, it becomes out of nowhere, it'll become like a regular street in a neighborhood. So, you might be, going 65 miles an hour, then you have to, I mean, if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden, you've got a stoplight right in front of you. So you really have to pay attention when you're on the road. So I think, when driving the daytime, it's a lot easier to catch that versus if you're driving at night and you've never, been on that highway or that road before.
Yeah, I agree. And with these 50-plus-year-old eyes, I don't like driving at night anyway anymore.
You're
So it's
50? I
like,
would have never guessed.
well, Um, so I so speaking of 50 plus, those of us who are 50 plus, many people are now on some sort of prescription med, right? And I know this is also on your list. So what is it about? I mean, there's pharmacies, as many pharmacies as there are like Starbucks in the US. Like I feel like every other corner there's a pharmacy, a
It's the
farmacia.
same company.
Yeah, right. I mean, like it's crazy, and I know it's readily available, but not everything is available, right?
Right,
And if it's
right.
something that you really need, what is it that you advise?
Right. So, if you are taking any type of medicine, I strongly urge, to find out if that medicine is available in Mexico and in your city, in your new Mexican city. So it might be available, but not all pharmacies are going to carry it. So there are some meds, only the big pharmacies have. So the little pharmacies you see all throughout town, like the little Starbucks, they're not gonna have it. So if your town, just has these little pharmacies, just be careful to make sure that they're going to carry that. And also find the INN name, right? So that's the international non-proprietary name for the medicine. So you want to find out what is the standardized name for the active ingredient in that drug, and to see if that is available here or a substitute for it. And if there is a substitute for it, get your doctor's guidance to make sure that's going to be okay for you to take. Otherwise, you look into, having your meds shipped here, or, it's often enough. Sometimes, people have friends come in from Canada or the States, and they bring some meds for their friends with them. But, you can't always rely on that. What if you have no friends coming down for a while and you need your medicine? So get in contact with a healthcare professional in your new Mexican town, or ask some friends or people that live there, and get this all sorted out before you come down.
All right. And actually reminds me about this woman, Pamela Thompson. She's a healthcare consultant based in Vallarta. And she's often said, actually, which I think is good advice as well, is that if you are new to Mexico, you might want to stick with the big brand kind of pharmacies. There's
Hmm.
Guadalajara, there's, what's it, Similares? There's a few that are
Yeah.
essentially chains, right? Just to make sure that you are getting the medicine that you need,
Right.
and that there's no questions.
Right. The Farmacia Guadalajara is a big chain, but also some of the big grocery chains like Walmart, Soriana, they have a pharmacy inside the grocery store, so you can go there and check as well.
That's great. That's great. And actually, which leads me to, because we were talking about medicines. So, actually, Daniel and
Hmm.
Pamela and I actually have a free webinar that we host. And basically, we talk everything from kind of top locations for expats, where expats are moving to. Daniel does a whole section on the buying basics of property. If you're interested in buying property, and then Pamela Thompson talks about kind of the healthcare options for foreigners. And so this webinar is totally free. It's about 45, 50 minutes, and all you got to do is register at www.dreamretirementinmexico.com/webinar if you want to sign up, and you just have to pick the date and time that works best for you. I think that's been really, really helpful for a lot of people who are kind of in these beginning stages of trying to figure out, do I want to, don't I not want to, and make people get more inspired and get people really going and taking action on their plan to move to Mexico, right? Because a lot of us sit and dream and think about it, but we don't actually take actual actionable steps towards doing it. So that webinar, again, that's dreamretirementinmexico.com/webinar. So what else do we have? What else should people be thinking about before they move to Mexico, Danielle?
Well, banking is obviously is key. So if you're planning on living here for a long term or full time,
Why?
you gotta
Isn't
have to.
everything free there?
Who needs money in the world, right? Yeah, and and some of the U.S. and Canadian banks have affiliates in Mexico. You know, for example, Santander Bank here has a partnership with Bank of America. So, and when you have these partnerships between the banks, sometimes they don't charge you a transaction fee. So when you withdraw the money or do wire transfers back and forth, but ideally, you should open up a bank account here in Mexico in pesos. It will be in pesos. And that way, you can get a credit card. It's a lot easier to withdraw the money. There are some banks here in Vallarta. They have a fully bilingual staff, tellers, so that makes the communication a lot easier. Some banks don't. Well, actually, most of them don't. But in the romantic zone, it's pretty common that you have English-speaking employees at the banks, so that really helps the expat community out a lot.
So I've heard that actually, if you're over 65 and you receive your Social Security, you can actually get that directly deposited in a Mexican bank, right?
Yeah, they weren't doing it before, but I believe that's changed now.
Yeah, so that's great, right? So to have that directly deposited and not having to have to go through a U.S. bank to then figure out how to get it to Mexico, that's just a pain in the butt. But yeah, so that seems to have expanded, which kind of is just another sign of so many, Americans kind of traveling and relocating abroad for retirement, which
Yeah.
is pretty amazing, I have to say. So anything else that people should be thinking about before they move to Mexico?
Well, I would say, don't procrastinate and wait till the last minute. Start doing everything like planning in advance. When I decided to move down here in 2003, like 6 months prior, I got the ball rolling. Paying off my debt, getting rid of furniture, figuring out the banking, consolidating some accounts, canceling a few other accounts, and just started planning everything in advance. What I'm going to take with me, what I'm not. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff to plan, and if you just wait like a month or two before you move, I mean, you might be overwhelmed and have a nervous breakdown, and that's the last thing you want on your way to paradise, to have a nervous breakdown. So, start planning
Yeah,
everything in
not a
advance.
good look.
Not a good look. We don't want that look in PV. But I think if you plan everything in advance, you'll be grateful you did. It'll be a lot of work in the beginning, but it's totally doable. And I'm not the first one that's done it. Millions of people have done this. And that kind of just sets you up to make sure that this big transition in your life is a success and you enjoy the entire journey and not just freak out, at the last minute.
All right. And I have to say, I think that it's important to know that you're not going to get it perfect. We all make mistakes. Most of them are, basically fixable, whether with money or with time. But I think that it's really important, like you say, to start earlier to avoid as many mistakes as possible, and learn from your peers. There's so many different ways to learn how to do this, and kind of the things that you really should be thinking about. And this is just one little short list to kind of get your list going in terms of your priorities on what you should be doing next. So Daniel, thank you so much. This has been really, really awesome.
No, it's been great seeing you again, Risa. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will see you in Vallarta.